We're artists, we're not musicians. Hi, hello. Welcome to what is, I guess, the 5th episode? Is that right? Are we on our 5th episode already? 4th, dang it. I don't get the numbers right. This is our 4th episode of Onion Skins. Yay, hooray. It's been a wild journey. We're on Spotify now, so that's kind of crazy. We have a special guest today in that this is the first guest who is not an animator. I'd like to welcome onto the show Ryan Yoshikami, legendary composer, former music composition student at CalArts. Welcome, Ryan.
Yay! Hi! Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We just like to sort of get to know our guests. I mean, all the previous people that were interviewed for the show were just people that I knew. This is our first time actually meeting face to face. I'm familiar with your work from last year and watching all of the previous year's open shows. Then I saw your name there quite a few times. You worked on a lot of animators films. Yep. But yeah, we usually like to kind of start off the show by kind of getting to know you and figuring out how you came to be where you are. Tell us about, I guess, first of all, just your journey to CalArts. Why did you choose CalArts?
So basically, as I was looking around for art schools, I remember my mom reaching out to my old choir director at a church that I used to sing at, and he recommended CalArts. And it wasn't on my radar at all. The two schools that I was applying to were Berklee College of Music and Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle. And so when I heard of CalArts, I never heard of it. I was like, oh, animation? All right, sure. But as a music program? Cool. Works for me. And so, yeah, I applied there, and I had one pretty decent piano solo piece, and then the other two were kind of not great. Yeah, it ended up working out, and I got accepted, and very, very grateful for that. So.
Yeah, and you got in, or you applied right out of high school?
Yes, I applied right out of high school and just got in, which is cool.
So you mentioned that you didn't know that CalArts was an animation school, I guess, prior to looking into it, and that wasn't really something that was on your radar. But I mean, I spent a lot of my day-to-day listening to your SoundCloud, and listening to all your songs, and I watched your recital too, your BFA recital.
Oh, whoa, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's all really great stuff. You have a lot of heavily game and animation influenced stuff there. I mean, you worked on a lot of animations, but it seems to be the predominant thing that's sort of in your breadth of work. Is there sort of a reason why score for animation so much? Is it just because there just happen to be so many, or is there something engaging about that in particular?
Well, I think when I was first getting into CalArts, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I know it was generally oh, I like video games. I could compose for that, I guess. And animation really wasn't on my radar. And it was until my second year when I actually started picking off slips on, the thousands of composer needed posters on the walls of CalArts, that as soon as I started scoring and getting into the mindset of what a media scorer or a media composer is supposed to do, something just kind of clicked, and I was just like, oh, I'm gonna be doing this for the rest of my life, I guess. because it was the mindset of scoring is something that just really speaks to me naturally, and it's just being able to understand and elevate a film to something even greater is really, it feels really powerful, and it's also incredibly fulfilling in general. And so when it comes to animation and video games, yeah, I absolutely love both mediums a lot because there's tons of creative potential, but I also just I genuinely love my job and what it takes in order to be efficient and effective in your job. Yeah, I never really scored anything when I was younger, by the way. I had a really amazing piano teacher who basically prodded me to be curious about things. I'd play a chord and it would be wrong, and I would like cringe at myself, and then he'd be like, no, 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 let's analyze that. Like, what about, oh, that's an interesting chord that made, and like, how can you like, how can you make a piece out of that maybe? And so he taught me a lot of that, which I'm very grateful for. But other than that, I didn't actually start composing a full piece until senior year when I applied to CalArts. It was all like little tiny fragments, which is kind of funny. But yeah, that's kind of where I came from.
So what was that? What was the first film that you worked on at CalArts?
The very first film I worked on was Sketch by Erica Shing. It was really terrifying because in the beginning, I didn't have a SoundCloud and I didn't have anything. And so I sent like horrible MP3s of like my piano improv. And I'm like, hey, this kind of fits your film, right? And I learned later, funny enough, that it was because of those custom demos that I was actually like picked, because, it's easy to just like shell out your SoundCloud or whatever and just be like, whatever. But yeah, when I was first starting out, it was really, the hardest part for me was the technical aspect, because I didn't even really know what a DAW or Logic or any of that was before I came to CalArts. And so with just learning the program itself and all of the technical hurdles I had to kind of jump over, and making like default strings sound good, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. At least technically. I think, as I mentioned before, I kind of feel like I had a knack generally for just the mindset, which, is really comforting, I guess, that it just fell naturally. But but Erica was like amazing to work with, and still is. I'm really grateful that like the first film that I scored wasn't dealing with like, somebody who had massive ego issues or something, because I've heard horror stories and I haven't run into that yet, so thank God. So
yeah, made it all 4 years, no ego, huh?
Oh, yeah, how does it work? I don't know.
I guess with that, something a lot of animators sort of struggle with, like animators are good at a couple things, mostly just drawing. When it comes to directing and like expressing in canonic words what they want in something is oftentimes like a difficult thing for any sort of filmmaker to convey to a composer, because it's a completely different medium. Like I at least to a lot of people who are starting out, they don't necessarily see how it combines necessarily super well, and sort of through that have trouble explaining to a composer what they want. What is a good and engaging way to, I guess, explain to you, if you were composing a film, what you want? I mean, I know that some people hate temp music, like just temp tracks, like actual music that's made for it, because it taints the way that they view the new track, and some people love it. Sort of, what is your take on like what you sort of require to get a project rolling?
Well, I think the most important thing to me here is emotion and intention. Like, those are the qualities that I stick to constantly throughout working on the film, because as a composer, your job is to elevate whatever the film needs and how you can make it stronger. And so if I can understand the general like tone of the film, if I can understand a character's intentions, if I can understand why different characters do different things and what the setting is and the backgrounds, and like giving me in a way what you would pitch to a completely random person is actually the most beneficial thing to rely on. I think it's pretty easy for animators sometimes to get trapped in this thinking of like, oh God, I need to use their language. And that makes it worse, because like, if you know that language, then great. But if you don't, and you're saying, oh, I'd kind of like a minor sound, then okay, great, we're gonna go with literally a minor sound, and maybe that's not what you want. So it's better to be specific about your language that you use when it comes to emotion. So maybe instead of sad, you can say melancholy or morose or drudgingly or something. Like, I don't know, just like make it, the more you make it specific to what you actually want to get across, that it's our job to translate that into music, not yours,
I think, yeah, that's definitely valuable information. I think I have a tendency to try and slip into that. I haven't really used a composer in recent years. I used to do film before this, and I would always, like, every time I would be at a family function, my uncle was like a jazz director at University of Texas, and he would always, the language that he uses is just so far above my head sometimes that I try and match it when I'm asking him about scoring and composing music, but it just doesn't work because I don't have that knowledge. But
yeah. And some composers do use that like high musical language when honestly they shouldn't, because the act of a composer and an animator and effective communication to me is making your language approachable and simple, and not using any flourishes or fancy, like, oh yeah, I can use parallel fourths here. It's like, nobody gives a shit what parallel fourths means. What actually you care about is why that works, and that's what you should be discussing, right? Be prepared. Also, that's another big thing about being a media composer. Anyway.
Yeah. So, yeah, sort of piggybacking off of that. So you have, I guess, when you're composing something, you have the initial pitch, you have the information that you need, you have like the emotional qualities, you understand those things. So where do you sort of go from there? I mean, like, do you noodle around for a little bit? I hate using that word, but like, do you like mess around for a little bit, or do you like really sit down and look through other things? Like, what is the sort of process for getting this from concept to composition, I guess?
Well, so basically, once I have everything, or at least as many resources as I can actually get, whether that be color script or pipeline tests or anything like that, the first thing that I do is I try to nail down the tone, try to nail down like a general like atmosphere, and try to make that particular atmosphere specific and unique to the film. I never want to make a sad scene in one film have exactly the same purpose as a sad scene in another film. And so I think when I usually start with a tonal sketch, it helps set the mood for the entire film. And I send that over and we go back and forth, and we go from there. But usually after like a tonal sketch, I'll start with like the big scenes, because scenes that define the film as a whole, or at least capture a lot of that general sound into one. Because once you have that down, you can have a grounded point to start and like develop off in any like kind of way. And so yeah, I kind of just do like a priority list down, like in terms of scenes. Sometimes I'll do chronologically if I feel like it works better for the film, but most of the time it's like big important scene, okay, we've got that down, now what can we use? And we can, like, it's not like you are taking a motif from a scene that doesn't mean anything, or maybe is just like filler, I don't know. If you start developing your motif at the most important part, you can be confident in using that motif further. So that's usually what I do, but also sometimes, crunch happens, and you kind of just have to go chronologically and be like, oh god, we have like 1 week. I need to get my ass fucking ready already. So.
Yeah. One thing that I noticed about the work that you do is that a lot of times, like, you're the sound designer in addition to the composer for these films. And I think that's something I really love about making short films, especially in school, is that you have I mean, in every sort of the animator and the composer, usually they have their hands over so many different facets of one project that there are considerations that you would have to make, I guess, that you wouldn't otherwise maybe have to think about directly because you were working with somebody else who was handling sound design. So with that in mind, I just wanted to kind of know what kind of considerations you have to make when you're blending sound design and music, and like, is it easier to do both instead of having to work with somebody else if you've ever had to do that before?
I think it depends on what kind of sound design, because I kind of like differentiate sound design in my head of like two categories, if you will. One of being like realistic sound design, grounded sound design, like slamming on a table or like wind. And then there's musical sound design that doesn't exist in the real world, but exists to like for a very specific film purpose, like a little synth like boop, you know, or like some kind of jingle maybe. Those require a little more, not creativity, but I usually just call it musical sound design. Just because a lot of what I'm thinking in music applies to that musical quote unquote sound design. But for a lot of the films that I choose, a lot of times it's honestly just easier for me to be the sound designer. Mainly because I'm a control freak. But also because if I can make the music and the sound design feel glued together, then I feel like there's a more cohesiveness to the overall film and the overall sound. I think when you're talking about realistic sound design, like I won't say anybody can do that because it does require a good level of like technical proficiency, but I think you can probably feel a lot more comfortable with like hiring a sound designer when it comes to a lot of real world sounds that takes a lot of energy to make the film feel real. So I think it just depends. But for me, I again, not only am I a control freak, but I also just like feeling like my hand is in the film in a way that I can be proud of. And to me, if I feel like part of the sound design isn't where it's supposed to be in the film, it still feels like I'm building a sound world. I'm not just making music when I compose music. I'm building a world. And I feel like that world can be broken if even the sound design doesn't exactly fit or match. So I kind of just like doing it myself. Although sound designers are important and you should get them if you can. Not every composer can, do sound design, but it's also just fun for me.
Yeah, I think that like when you have one person, there are obviously a lot of benefits to working with two different people. Obviously the workload is shared, but I think like you have this nice cohesive blend of sound design and like what you said, musical sound design. It's a great way of putting it, because that's exactly what I think I liked most about the sound work that you did for Aya's film Framed. I thought that was great. I went on, like I said, I went on your SoundCloud and I listened to the actual soundtrack, and it was interesting to kind of like pick apart like, oh, this is crazy. This would, like, listening to it independently, like you hear that like it's both musical and really great sound design, and it works really well for the sort of blend of the film. So
thank you.
Yeah, no, it's really great. Hey guys, just wanted to take a minute here to give a thanks to our sponsor, Anchor. Like the Joe Rogan podcast, man, we got sponsors. We're on Spotify. What is happening? It's kind of crazy. But yes, Anchor is our sponsor this week and for the foreseeable weeks. They're really great. Let me explain to you. First of all, it's completely free. It is the easiest way to make a podcast. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, which is super convenient for us, not being super tech savvy all the time. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. In fact, that is how you are listening to this podcast right here. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. We're all about that paper here on Onion Skins. So we'll be waiting for our $3 check in the mail from Spotify very soon from all 2 of you who are listening. But yeah, it's everything that you need to make a podcast in one place. Please do yourself a favor. If you're thinking about doing a podcast, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Again, that is anchor.fm. Thank you very much, Anchor. Sort of off of that, we talked a little bit about your love for video games. You were in Game Makers Club, am I correct?
Yes, I was.
Yes, and you got to be a part of a lot of fun activities in that way, including We Met in May, which is really fun. I haven't actually played it, but I saw all the work that you did for it, and I saw videos of it being played. And I just kind of wanted to know what, compared to, we talked about short films, but like, first of all, I guess what draws you to video game composition in particular, and like sort of how that differs or departs from the work that you do for film.
So, in terms of my love for video game and video game music in general, a lot of it, frankly, just comes down to the fact that I played a lot of Nintendo, like, shit as a kid. I was obsessed with, like, Super Monkey Ball 2 and, like, DDR Extreme for the PS2, like Katamari Damacy, like, all the kind of, like, weird, quirky games that I really admire for its individuality. And that's never waned, ever. And I think the reason why I love video game music so much in general is because of the amount of freedom that you have. With scoring to a set piece of media, like a film, you have your limitations, or you have your, you have your framework. You have your framework there, and it's 4 minutes, it's 2 minutes, it's 6 minutes. There are certain scenes, they do not change, regardless of how many times you play it. With a video game, there are tons and tons and tons of different ways people experience a video game. They can blaze through it and not give a shit about any of the story scenes. They could just like skip through everything, or they could take their fucking time. And sorry, swearing. But that element of interactivity makes, in my opinion, video game music a hell of a lot more difficult. Because you need to now think about making music that people do not get tired of. When you're watching a film, you see a scene, it's 10 seconds long. It's 30 seconds long. Sometimes, like, oh God, I have to take a bathroom break. All right, I'm going to pause the game, and this is going to loop for, like, 5 minutes. And you don't have any control of that. So you need to keep that in mind, along with it looping seamlessly, and along with keeping enough interest in the background while also not like taking too much away, but there's a lot to consider. And so I find it to be harder, but still fun. Yeah, I think that's the main difference between video games and scoring films. So
is that something that you sort of, I guess, developed over being in Game Makers Club? Or is there, I mean, because obviously like that sort of, I don't know, maybe you've played enough video games. I certainly haven't to like take those things into consideration when you're scoring something. Are there some things that you kind of learned along the way, or somebody like had to sit you down and tell you like, we need this to be able to be interesting and engaging for a 5-minute loop?
Yeah, nobody told me that. That's the thing about CalArts, is that I love the school. There are many problems, but in terms of what I came there for, it has a lot of resources that I was able to use, but when it came to the specific information that I wanted to actually get, like help with scoring, like help with translating emotion to music, you really don't get any of that at all. We have one film scoring class. And so, you know, it's a lot of everything that I'm saying right now is literally just me thinking about it incessantly and also just doing it. So yeah, you don't really learn that if you don't have anyone to actually teach you. Yeah, in terms of game makers though, I definitely learned a lot from that club, just because like making a game is fucking like it is a miracle. Anytime a game gets made, it is an absolute miracle from heaven. Because the amount of things that can go wrong. I mean, I'm sure it's similar to animation, right? It's just like you have to think about everybody's part, not just your own. Taking everybody's perspective into consideration is really, really important, not just in general as a life skill, but also for scoring, because you can't just make. A lot of times I try to tell myself constantly, separate yourself from the work you do, because if you try to like put your ego into the music, you're not thinking about the scene, you're not thinking about the game, you're just thinking about what would sound cool to you. In a way, it's a very like, it's like a serve job of just like, I am here, my one purpose is to make your project so much better and to elevate everything about it to something that actually sticks with you.
Yeah, I think that's like something that even like animators have a hard time considering, like when they're making their own films, is like the idea that this scene or this particular moment needs to serve the rest of the film. And that's definitely something that we struggle with a lot. And it's sort of part of the art of the beautiful part about limitations in your own film that you set for yourself. And I think that, like, I hadn't really thought about it before, but it's something we talk about a lot on the podcast, or a lot with our friends, just in general, about like how awesome setting limitations for yourself are for what you want to do, and it ultimately creates a better project. Is that something that sort of translates for your field as well, like limitations, setting limitations for yourself?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. I see media scoring in general as kind of like an open-ended logic puzzle, where basically you have these constraints and you can solve the puzzle in different kinds of ways, but what is the best and most effective solution? And I think being able to, for me at least, I'm a very calculated person when it comes to scoring in general and my music in general. I love the thrill of being able to know that I can defend every single note in my score. that is like it gets me, it's getting me excited right now just thinking about it. Is like, because that, like, it means that every single decision you made was a confident one, and that's really thrilling. What was the original question again?
I was just I think you kind of touched on it, just about
okay, cool.
like self-imposed limitations, or limitations imposed just by the nature of the project, to ultimately have like a better product than you would otherwise.
Yeah I mean, like, the film itself is a limitation, and you know, it's not like you're composing. That's why I go back to the ego thing, where it's like, you can't approach a film just exactly as you would like an album or a grad recital. Like, it's not fully for you. Like, you have restraints to focus on, and you need to, I say work around it, but maybe that's not the right term. It's fairly negative connotation. I'd say maybe, I keep using the word elevate. You elevate it. Yeah. It's the best word I can think of. But yeah, the film is a limitation in general, so might as well work with it as opposed to against it.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like in any sort of circumstance where you're fighting the limitations, it reads really clearly that you're fighting it after the fact. I think that, like, sort of, I don't know how this necessarily transitions super well, but like when I was going through all of your work, it all has like it feels very different from piece to piece, but in some sense feels, I guess, cohesive. Like you switch sort of, even when you switch genres of music from like more of like a, I don't know the right terms, like digital fusion type thing, to more of like a jazz, like freeform kind of thing, it still has like your voice in there. And I think that's something that all artists struggle with, is trying to find your voice in the thing that you like to do the most. Is there sort of some sort of path that you have found in making your own work that helps strengthen your voice, or do you feel like you even have one?
Oh no, I definitely do. Like, I can't lie to myself. I if I write something, you're gonna find me littered throughout that. I think one of the biggest things that has really helped shape my own voice and my own vision, a couple things. The first thing is analysis. Like a lot of analysis when it comes to things that you enjoy. So I'll listen to like a random pop song, and for most of the song, I will be dead bored. And then there will be one little chord change that I'm like, oh my God, what was that? And I'll want to figure out why I liked that. You know, it's finding like the connecting factors between everything that you like and why you like it. So I love Death Grips. I also love Kyari Pamu Pamu J-pop. So like, what's the connecting factor there? Like, okay, there's a lot of really interesting rhythmic like shit with Death Grips, and then there's also like a lot of really amazing like jazz, typical like Japanese jazz chord progressions in J-pop. And so you find those elements that really speak to you, and you apply them to your own work, little by little. I think describing why you like something is really, really valuable and has helped me immensely. Not only that, I come from a family too of like fiercely individualistic people, where my sister and my mom and my dad, they all forged their paths completely on their own, regardless of what anybody said. And so I think I got a lot of that just inclination from them, and just being like, oh, people are doing their thing, but you have your own voice to use, and what do you want to say, and what do you enjoy, and what do you want to hear more of. And so, you know, it's cool to have that background too. So it's a combination of the two, I'd say.
I once had a drawing teacher, like before I came to CalArts, I studied school here in Maryland, and I had a drawing teacher once who told me that like if you draw a certain way, or if you keep coming back to something that you really like in a way that you like to draw or render things, then that probably means that you should probably explore that to its fullest extent. And I think that like up until then, I was always trying to do things the quote right way, like figure out the exact way, and in that I kind of lost a lot of like what I like to do and trying to figure out the things that I like to draw, or my own voice. And I think that was a real, for whatever reason, like a synapse just like strengthened in my brain. And like I really found that like, yeah, exploring the things that you like and like figuring out why you like them and why you like to draw a certain way is really an important part of figuring that out, because it might not always be that forever. Probably won't. I mean, hopefully, I mean, everybody's kind of growing in some way, but yeah, I don't know. It's definitely like a useful tool I've found also, and in finding my voice.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, well, another big thing too is like being open to change, and like if you see yourself like going in like another direction, it's like follow it. Just because I've had that also happen a lot through my time, where it's just like, oh, okay, I'm going the more like hardcore jazz route. I guess we're just going there now, because like when you're not given a direction, you kind of just have to forge your own. And so I'm lucky enough in a way to be not given a direction, I guess. So, but yeah, I think what you were saying, I really agree with. And I'm glad that, you know, especially at CalArts, I think one of the best things about CalArts is they try to be like, hey, what do you want to do? It's like, I don't know. Okay, well, we're gonna sit here until you know what to do. At least in the music school, at least. Or in the composition program specifically, because it's, dear God, it's open-ended. A grad recital isn't even required. So yeah, it's pretty nice to have that free reign in that way.
Yeah. When you, I guess, are attracted to an idea or attracted to a specific piece of music or style, like if you're in like a jazz mood, or if you're like, God damn it, I just really want to make some chip tune or something. Do you feel like you have to, I guess, like explore that fully before you move on? Or, I mean, I guess you kind of mentioned like you kind of pepper things in, or you figure things out little by little. But I mean, is there ever a point where you feel like you have to really delve deep into one thing for a while in order to get the most out of it?
Yes and no, honestly, because I think like over the years I've developed a core, and whatever like variation I move towards, that core is always going to be there. So in a way, it feels like in terms of my own music writing, I have this one style that I know is part of me. It could change, maybe, I don't know, but for now it is solidified. And whatever little branch I want to explore, like, sure, I'm happy to delve into weirder shit, you know, polka metal. Sure, let's do it. Hell yeah. But like that core is always going to be there. I think it's kind of just like you're stretching yourself out a tiny little bit and then like bringing yourself back in when you need to.
I'm gonna kind of derail us here for a little bit because
Sure.
I think I think I wanted to kind of talk about sort of what the road for somebody who wants to do music composition or compose video games or short films or any kind of film. I mean, what does that sort of process look like? I mean, it looks like, because for us it's very like, it almost feels regimented. Like you feel like you have a very clear path. You're like, okay, well, first and second year I can kind of like mess around, but then third year I'm gonna get an internship. Oh boy. And then that internship will lead to a job, and that job will lead to 1,000 other jobs. Is that sort of the same? Is there any sort of similarities in that, or sort of what is the actual path to doing the kinds of things that you're doing?
Well, I mean, the short unfortunate answer is just do it, but that's not helpful. So let me try to think of a better one. I think honestly, I'd probably say analysis and practice, and also practicing empathy. Maybe those three there, because I think it's incredibly important to like, there's the mindset part of it, like the mental part of it, and the technical side. And the technical side, like, okay, great, I could talk your ear off about like, okay, get a DAW, learn an instrument basic instrument skills, or, you know, what's a major chord, what's a minor chord, know the difference, like that kind of stuff. And that's all craft. But when it comes to the mentality, especially for somebody who doesn't really understand how it works, it's really tricky. Because again, you are not composing for yourself, you're composing for a separate entity. And so being able to, again, analyze the whatever it is, film, video game, being able to analyze the film and say, okay, this works because why? You know, go to a fucking, you know, watch Jurassic Park or something. When the dinosaur appears and it's like da 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 da, like why does that feel so triumphant? Why, albeit cheesy, but why does it feel so triumphant? There is a reason. And I think the more you think about that, the more you'll be better equipped when you actually start it for the first time. And also just like practice. Like take a random, get a video, like Google like a video game you've never heard of, or that you've kind of heard of but don't know anything about, or a film or something, and mute the audio, go into your DAW, your digital audio workstation, and just write. Score the scene, and see how difficult it is. And also finish it, first of all, and then look back and show it to other people. Say, what is this not working? What's going on? Why isn't this working? Okay. And go back, make edits. All right. Maybe this can work out and that can work out. It's all, you are you are like a puzzle master basically when you compose a film, because it's never going to be the same, and you always have to keep that like core skill of being able to empathize and understand like an audience member's feelings, and expectations is a giant one too. You know, expectations on where the film is going, what they actually think about the character in that moment. That takes a lot of practice, not just in terms of that skill specifically within music, but also like in real life. You know, that's my perspective on it.
Definitely. Well, I think we're nearing the end here. At the end of the podcast, we've been asking people to kind of plug something that they really like. Usually in the past, it's just been films or TV shows. But I think it's fair to say for you, I mean, I would love to hear your film recommendations, but also your video game or music recommendations, anything that you're really into right now that you think people need to be on right now. Is there anything right now that you're really into?
Oh man, I mean, Animal Crossing, but I mean, I feel like everybody's into that right now. Oh, in terms of game, one game that I've really been invested in is Kentucky Route Zero. It's a point and click game that you can get on the Switch, and it is probably the best use of sound design I have ever heard in any piece of media ever. So check that out.
Definitely.
It is absolutely gorgeous, and I've been playing through it and been so incredibly enamored with just how I hate the word, but it's the best word, poignant the story is, and how patient it is as well. I really appreciate that. In terms of film or animation, I watched Eizouken recently. That was really cool. Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken, which is by Masaaki Yuasa, who's an amazing animation director who I find a lot of inspiration from in general. Tatami Galaxy, by the way, is my favorite anime of all time. I will talk anyone's ear off about it. It's brilliant. But yeah, there's that. I don't know. Listen to Thundercat's new album. Yeah.
You have a lot of recommendations. I really respect that. It's been hard getting people on here, kind of throwing them into the deep end. It's only something I forget to mention. Like, everybody's like, I don't know, maybe watch this thing. I don't know. But you have some solid recs, and I think that we very much appreciate that.
Yeah.
Where can people find you online, Ryan?
So I go by Quarkimo, Quarkimo, on Twitter, on SoundCloud, on Instagram, on... That's it. So feel free to find me on those. I post stuff often. Oh, and if I can plug myself.
Yes.
So last summer I started a project called TAC, and I am extremely proud of it. And I'm starting it back again. It's basically a project where I take a random video game song, and then for the first week I transcribe it fully and I write sheet music and everything. And then for the second week I compose a song inspired by that original track. And so that's been really fun and super fulfilling. So if you want it, if you like video game music, check that out. So.
Yeah, definitely do. I listened to it on your website.
Oh, cool.
Which, it was really great. You have some really great stuff on there. So yes, by all means, guys, go check out his website. Check out his social medias. We'll be putting them in the show notes. Definitely. Thank you for your recommendations, and most importantly, thank you for your time. Thank you for talking to us.
Yeah, oh my god, absolutely. I never talk about this stuff with anybody, and it drives me insane. So I really like talking about it. So thank you. Thank you for letting me
absolutely.
Gab on. But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. We will see you again next week with another very special guest. They're all very special, but yeah, they're all equally special. We love them all. Thanks for listening, guys. Catch you later. Bye.